It's 8 p.m. in Banjul. This is GRTS News, broadcasting for viewers in the Gambia and around the world. We begin with our top stories this hour. World Bank chief discusses state of the Gambian economy with the vice president. Tackling money laundering and terrorist financing, representatives of financial institutions, legal and security sector begin a major training on monetary tracking and reporting. And a 3-day review of the National Disaster Management Policy Strategy and Plan of Action is underway in Fonyi Bintankaranai in the West Coast region. In sports, glory signs on the Gambia's under-20 team as the Young Scorpions register a semi-final spot at the ongoing West African Football Championship in Mauritania with a 4-0 win over Liberia. And away from home, a protest against foreigners from accessing health services in South Africa has turned violent. Plus, UN inspectors say Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has been physically violated, raising concerns about its safety. Well, details of these and other stories coming ahead in this edition of the news at 2000 hours. I am Fatoumata Cham, and many thanks for joining us. Welcome back, and it's great to have you here with us. We begin with the Vice President, Dr. Aliou Badara Diouf, who received in audience the World Bank Country Director, Nathan Bellete, at the State House on Friday. The World Bank country boss was accompanied by the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, C.D. Keita. In an interview with GRTS shortly after his closed-door meeting with the Vice President, Mr. Bellete said their discussions include strengthening partnership in the areas of social protection services, technical and vocational training, as well as forthcoming national census. Here is an excerpt.
The focus of our meeting this morning was focused around 3 areas, principally. The first was on our partnership on the social protection activities in the Gambia. The second was on the request of the Vice President for additional support in the area of technical and vocational training. And the third was on additional support for the forthcoming census and support to the Bureau of Statistics. We are very pleased with the proactive engagement of His Excellency the Vice President in the social protection space. There's a very clear commitment to not just improve the efficiency, the efficacy by which the government is rolling out social protection services to Gambian citizens, but also to look very critically at the design and the implementation arrangements of the broader social protection system in the government. So the agreement that we had was to continue to work very closely between the World Bank and the government over this next year in close collaboration with the Honorable Minister of Finance and the relevant line ministries to see how best we can further strengthen and enhance this.
Well, that was the World Bank Country Director, Nathan Bellete, speaking after a closed-door meeting with Vice President Dr. Aliou Badara Diouf at State House in Banjul. And moving on, a 3-day review of the National Disaster Management Policy, Strategy and Plan of Action is underway in Fonyi Bintankaranai, West Coast region. The convergence is organized by the National Disaster Management Agency under the Office of the Vice President in collaboration with the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources. Well, that report by Yusuf Bojang will air in our subsequent bulletin. A standoff between oil management companies and the government of the Gambia on fuel prices has caused scarcity of vehicles, resulting in disruption on transportation services affecting mostly commuters. The detail of that report as well will air in our subsequent bulletin. And moving on, now the Gambia Bankers Association, the Ministry of Justice as well as the security sector representatives have joined microfinance institutions on Friday for a major training on anti-money laundering and terrorist financing. The training is designed to expose officials to monetary tracking as well as reporting skills to combat financial fraud. Aminata E. Sanyang has more details.
Pioneered to combat money laundering and terrorist financing, the Bankers Association joined partners from the Justice Department and Security sector for a major roundtable on anti-money laundering and terrorist financing.
AMLCFT at a time of sophisticated and complex customer demand for banking service is indeed a daunting task. At the Gambia Bankers Association, we believe the journey starts from understanding fraud and how it can be impact on our operations. Then we will be able to design and implement mitigation control in the system. To this end, the Gambia Bankers Association has already run training on financial fraud awareness and investigation procedures with the FIU for the commercial banks over the years. It was attended by banks officials and significant number of participants from the public enterprise and other non-bank financial operators.
The joint training is a combination of the Bankers Association, Police Force, Ministry of Justice and microfinance institutions who are fostering collaboration to tackle money laundering and illicit financial flows.
Money laundering is a crime, and this is so because the stakeholders have not raised the level of awareness sufficiently. Awareness is lacking in the fight against money laundering. Money laundering is a way of legitimizing illegal activity. It contributes to making crime pay. From my vantage point, money laundering also contributes to undermining the integrity of the financial system and market processes. Where a financial institution is used wittingly or unwittingly by criminal elements or terrorists, there is an increase in reputation risk not just to the financial institution, but also to the whole system, country, region, globally.
As the impact of the risk of money laundering terrorist financing on the financial system are often broad and varied, there's a strong and meaningful collaboration between stakeholders is critical to effectively mitigate them. Effective partnership among stakeholders is critical. It is a critical success factor in safeguarding the integrity of our financial system. The second round of mutual evaluation of the Gambia was concluded in June this year. This evaluation enabled the international stakeholders to assess the level of compliance and the effectiveness of the country's regime, AML safety regime, with respect to international standard on combating money laundering and terrorist financing and the counter proliferation financing.
Stakeholders say banks and forex bureaus are highly vulnerable sectors facing fraudsters and illicit financial flows, which greatly undermine economic growth and stability.
Terrorism, it's a very complex transaction. It's a transnational crime that is embedded in many other criminal activities. And finance is just one of those ways of its expansion. Because to carry out terror activities, you need the funding. How do they get the funding? Is by illicit means, and the illicit means are through money laundering to finance terrorism. But who are the conduits of these fundings, of this laundering? Is usually the banks and the microfinance institutions and the real estates. We know this because we are in the field and we see happenings around.
The training, which brought together a vast range of stakeholders, will shape new partnerships and help stakeholders to identify and tackle financial fraud and money laundering in the Gambia. Aminata E. Sanyang, GRTS.
Well, we go back to our earlier mentioned story where a standoff between oil management companies and the government of the Gambia on fuel prices has caused scarcity of vehicles, resulting in disruption of transportation services affecting mostly commuters. Our Ba Ibrahim Cham caught up with the newly elected president of the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Idrissa Mas Job, on the current situation. Here is an excerpt.
The same thing happened last month, and it was through the GCCI that we brought the government and the OMCs together. This has never happened before in the Gambia. We have been in this sector for over 30 years, and it has not happened before. We think that it's just a temporal inconvenience or misunderstanding. And tomorrow I can tell you that the government and the OMCs are going to sit again together to try to resolve this. You know that petroleum prices are set by the state. It is not the oil marketing companies that set these prices. But then it has to be set at a level that is good for the community, because the overall world market prices are going down. So I believe that the price of fuel can go down, and it can only go down if we contract the duties and taxes, because businesses cannot be expected to subsidize the public. It's not feasible technically. So what we are asking the government to do is to be able to reduce their taxes and keep the prices as low as, or even drive the prices down. Why am I saying this? The reason I'm saying this, because petroleum affects every other industry. If we reduce the price of the petroleum product, it's going to benefit all of them. I'm very confident that tomorrow, like the last month, when we sit down, this will be resolved very, very.
Now, moving on, the Gambia Armed Forces have completed a 2-week training for its officers on gender in peace support operations. The training was facilitated by the British Peace Support Team Africa, and 36 officers from the Gambia Armed Forces benefited from the training, along with 2 others from the Gambia Police Force and the Immigration Department. Rahibite was at the closing held at the officers' mess, and she tells us more.
With a sense of fulfillment, they celebrate the climax of a 2-week intensive training on gender in peace support operations. The training, facilitated by the British Peace Support Team Africa, saw the men and women of the Gambia Armed Forces performing to tasks. 36 of the participants were from the Gambia Armed Forces, 1 from Immigration, and 1 from the police.
This was a package that was organized by the British Peace Support Team Africa, in collaboration with the Gambia Armed Forces, for members of the security services in the Gambia, composed of the Gambia Armed Forces and the other security services.
Having undergone a 2-week training, here they are receiving certificates for a successful completion. According to Dr. Sela King-Oro, Senior Gender Advisor, British Peace Support Team Africa, the training is on the mission of mainstreaming gender within the service. She expressed satisfaction with the participants, saying they fully participated, with some leaving as potential trainers, urging the GAF training school to utilize them.
In the syndicate assignments, participants also demonstrated their ability to reinforce the gender message on various platforms. I'm very glad that the director training is here, and my hope is that the training school can consider conferring some of these brilliant participants the responsibility of delivering gender training, not only in pre-deployment training, but in other available training opportunities.
Representing the Chief of Defense Staff, Colonel Musa Tarawale, said this is in line with their mission as they continuously endeavor to enhance the skill of officers for better understanding in gender-related issues. He also urged the participants to make best use of the knowledge gained.
The primary mission of militaries the world over is the preservation and defense of territorial integrity of their countries. This mission has never changed, but the environment in which we operate as a force is gradually changing as we continue to face new security challenges. It is therefore imperative that you are often trained to perfect your skill under challenging circumstances. It is in this regard that the Military High Command, in collaboration with our partners, such as the United Kingdom, will continue to devote considerable efforts and resources to build up your capacity.
Sergeant John Maimuna spoke on behalf of her colleagues. She thanked the facilitators and the Gambia Armed Forces for the opportunity According to her, this will help in their duties, especially in peace operations.
I want to assure you that the knowledge gained in this course will be our guiding principle, and that we will share the knowledge to our colleagues in our units who are not opportune to be part of this course. To my fellow participants, knowing the common say that whom much is given, much is expected. So I challenge you and challenge myself to share this knowledge gains in this course with our colleagues in our various units.
When one is trained, expectations are usually high, and in this case, hopes are that the participants will now promote gender equality in peace support operations. Rohi Bitey, GRTS.
Now, a 3-day review of the National Disaster Management Policy, Strategy and Plan of Action is underway in Fonyi Bintang Karanai in the West Coast region. The convergence is organized by the NDMA under the Office of the Vice President in collaboration with the Ministry of the Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources. Yusuf Bojang attended the opening ceremony and he filed in this report.
The review of the National Disaster Management Policy, Strategy and Plan of Action brought together stakeholders in disaster management to review and validate the draft disaster management documents, a key milestone in our efforts to build a resilient nation. The retreat also seeks the review of the National Disaster Management Policy, Strategy and Plan of Action brought together stakeholders in disaster management to review and validate the draft disaster management documents, a key milestone in our efforts to build a resilient nation. The retreat also seeks to ensure that the country is adequately prepared for effective disaster management. The Executive Director, National Disaster Management Agency, Mr. Sana Dahaba, said the forum will enable stakeholders review and come up with a comprehensive and all-inclusive national strategic plan that will help strengthen disaster risk governance, build stronger systems for effective disaster risk reduction at all levels.
It is essential to note that in recent years, the frequency and intensity of disaster are on the increase, and they often affect the fabrics of society, especially in developing countries. The aim of this retreat is to ensure that the country is adequately prepared for effective disaster management, looking at the entire disaster management cycle. The 3-day retreat to review and validate the draft disaster management policy 2022 to 2032. The National Disaster Management Strategy, integrating of the UNDAC assessment report to be anchored on the policy and the strategy, and taking cue from it, formulate a national strategy and action plan for the short, medium and long-term disaster risk reduction.
The Development Advisor, Office of the President and the Vice President, Sering Fallu Njai, said government is committed to effective disaster management.
We needed to have this national policy in place so that it guides the actions of every stakeholder when such things happen, and also it enhances coordination of activities. As you know, there are many different stakeholders that are involved, not only the disaster management agencies, but then also like the National Roads Authority, the security services, lands. Everybody is a stakeholder, and there is need to adequately define the roles and responsibilities of each of these stakeholders, particularly what needs to be done at what time, by who or by when.
The Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Lands and Regional Government, Buba Sanyang, said the policy will help guide and promote development planning and address disaster risk alongside environmental and climate change effects in the country.
The government allocates lands within the planned areas. I think we have seen in the Kotus, we have seen in the pipelines, we have seen in the Fajaras, we have seen in the Vigilos, we have seen in the estates where our government has done planning and then allocated these areas. We definitely have less problems within these areas where government has gone through the process and then planned this area. But some of these areas that we are talking about are allocated by local authorities like Alkali and the family landowners. So in that situation, most of the time before the state comes into play, this change of hand in terms of money, buying and selling, it has taken place. So we will try to see how the physical planning goes into the development control.
Lieutenant Colonel, Commanding Officer, 4th Infantry Battalion, Abdullah Mbu, stressed the need for concerted efforts to address disaster issues.
In the month of July, when the rains came and there were floods across the country, the armed forces was among the first to be called, as it a mandate to respond to disasters when they strike. So we were called and we responded. However, the armed forces is not adequately resourced with the logistics requirements. So I think as a major stakeholder in disaster response, the policy should address the logistics that are required to respond to disasters in this country.
Stakeholders were divided into 5 groups to critically review the document. The policy aims to create an integrated national capacity to identify and monitor vulnerability and hazard strength, including potential climate change impacts, as well as strengthen local risk reduction, focusing on communities and supporting linkages with regional and district structures. Yusfa Bojang, GRTS News.
Well, moving on now, the ambassador of Guinea-Bissau to the Gambia, Luis Domingos de Barros, on Thursday paid a courtesy call on the Director General of the Gambia Radio and Television Services, GRTS, in Kanifing. The visit, according to the top diplomat, is meant to build a working relationship between GRTS and the sister national broadcaster in Bissau. This, he highlighted, will improve expertise between the two institutions, as well as strengthen bilateral ties between Bissau and Banjul. Ambassador Barros also disclosed that amongst their discussions include cultural exchanges between the two countries that is not limited to the enhancement of the sub-regional brotherhood, but also share traditional values and cultures amongst the citizens. The Director General of GRTS, Malik Jeng, and senior management welcomed the visit whilst assuring of a fruitful working relations between the Guinea-Bissau and the office of the ambassador. He encouraged the top diplomat to safeguard the peaceful brotherhood between the two nations. And moving on from that development, we look at a new approach to sexuality education, as education researchers reveal major gaps in the communication of sexual and reproductive health issues in the Gambia. 70 students from 43 various schools within the West Coast region are now being taken through an intensive, comprehensive and sexuality education training anchored on the outcomes of a research project focused on strengthening access to quality comprehensive health education in collaboration with International Development and Research Center. By Ibrahim Cham tells us more.
Research findings from the Strengthening Access to Quality Comprehensive Education Research Project shows major gaps in communication between students, parents, and teachers on sensitive topics concerning sexual education, particularly during puberty. The research conducted in 43 schools involved data collection interviews with community leaders, educationists, and civil society actors on domestic attitudes and social engagement, highlighting the need for a more robust approach on sensitization on comprehensive and sexuality education. Dr. Phoeben Inagran Sanyang is the principal investigator of the project.
So we conducted a research, and the research that what we have been asking about, how you guys got to know yourself, where do you get information, how do you manage yourself when you guys reach puberty and reproduction, and where are the information, who give you the information, where do you get information from, and how is also the school, especially the curriculum that we are teaching, do you get enough information from the curriculum, do you get adequate information from the schools? Do you get the right information from your parents? Or where do you get information? Is it your peers who advise you, your family members, or the media that advised you? So we have got a lot of interesting findings. And when we've concluded the research, we have found something called a gap, and the gap is communication.
The core of the basics of this training was centered on menstruation and ovulation, puberty and sexual transmitted diseases, pregnancy, unwanted and unplanned pregnancy, unsafe abortion, sexual gender-based violence, as well as forced and early marriage, including FGM, and all no-go subjects, giving a wide berth in social conversations. Students were taken through various means they can use to seek protection from all forms of unsafe and unwanted sex, alongside the repercussions involved.
On that note, the need to educate adolescents is seen, which is why this training is being organized. As we go with the motto, learn and teach others, after this training, comprehensive health education clubs will be established in your respective schools or incorporated in existing clubs, just like the peer health, where each of you, that is the trainees, will serve as focal persons so as to train others and help broaden the information you are going to learn with us during this 2 days training.
Principal Education Officer Mrs. Fatu Bitei Cham urged students to approach the course seriously, considering the vital and life-changing information being taught.
We said now, let us integrate it into the career subjects. You will see that all these issues of comprehensive health education that we are talking about, we now try to integrate it. You will see it in your mathematics. There it can come under statistics. It can come under any other team under mathematics. You have it in English. As passages, you must do English. You must read those passages. Therefore, you will have issues of comprehensive health education.
The 2-day training is expected to expand our conversation on comprehensive sexual health and also educate participating students in crucial topics shaping their future, a challenging task and subject largely unaddressed in many households. Reporting for GRTS News, I'm by Ibrahim Cham.
Now, the National Agricultural Research Institute, NARI, in partnership with the Plant Protection Services under the Sri Mayo project, recently concluded a 3-day training of trainers on the use of developing technologies to monitor and control fruit flies in the Gambia. The training, held in Jinoy, Lower River region, brought together agricultural extension workers from the West Coast as well as the North Bank region. Usman Balde picks up the rest of that story.
Participants drawn from the West Coast region and North Bank region respectively are expected to be able to identify, monitor and control fruit flies on mangoes and other fruit trees at the end of the training. Speaking at the 3 days training of developing technologies on monitoring system of destructive fruits insects, the Director General of NARI, Dr. Demba Jallo, explained the impacts of fruit flies on farm produce.
The fruit fly has been causing havoc in the mango sector for quite a time now. As a result, exposing our export to serious issues. In the European Union, for example, the fruit fly is considered as a quarantine pest, which means if a consignment of mangoes is detected with even a single larvae, this could lead to the confiscation, rejection, and totally destruction of the whole consignment. So this is serious for our economy. This is serious for livelihoods of smallholder farmers, and I think it is important that this kind of training is done.
The Regional Agricultural Director for Lower River Region, Mamadou Lamin Dabo, described the training as useful, citing the highly consumption of mangoes fruits among the population.
This is a great measure in order for extension workers to identify. After identify, they can able to monitor. After monitoring, they can able to control. So identifying, monitor and control, that will actually reduce the population of fruit flies. And at the end of the day, it can even become history to the country to say fruit fly was a problem in this country. And in doing so, it will also increase the exportation of mango fruits and other vegetables outside the country, which will earn the country to have more foreign currency earning. So actually this training is very, very important, and is piloted to NBR and West Coast region at the moment, but we believe it will be going countrywide.
The acting director of Plant Protection Services at the Ministry of Agriculture, Dr. Chere Mani, urged participants to make best use of the opportunity to effectively disseminate accurate information to farmers. This, he said, will reduce harvest losses, thereby improving production and productivity. He said the training is an opportunity to help farmers meet international standard of exportation of fruits products. Participants will be equipped at the end of the training to build farmers' knowledge of fruit management through step-down training. Usman Balde, GRTS News.
Well, we'll take a short break now. The news continues in just a moment. Do stay.
Do you enjoy spending time online with your friends on social media? If so, then AfriCell has the best offer for you. Activate the social media bundle for $10 is only and enjoy 40 megabytes valid for 24 hours. WhatsApp, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, and Viber all for $10 is only. Dial 120# and press 3 to activate the social media bundle. No need to subscribe every day. It will automatically roll over for your enjoyment. AfriCell Social Media Bundle. Let us socialize.
You can now receive money anytime and anywhere in Gambia through MoneyGram for free. Simply dial *777# to register and access your MoneyGram at any AfriMoney agent. Free cash outs, $100 is free for all MoneyGram transfers into AfriMoney. Cash out at any AfriMoney agent or AfriCell outlet.
COVID-19 is real. Here are some steps you can observe to keep you and your family safe. Get vaccinated against COVID-19. The vaccine is safe and effective and can protect you from getting sick. The vaccine is readily available in any health facility, free of charge. Currently, there are 3 different types of vaccines, namely Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Sinopharm. The goal of the Gambia Ministry of Health is to vaccinate everybody, young and old people, including children aged 12 years and above. Hand washing with soap, when done correctly, is critical in the fight against COVID-19. It is one of the cheapest, most effective things you can do to protect yourself and others. Wash your hands frequently, including every time you enter the home or office. Avoid shaking hands with other people. After you cough or sneeze and before you eat, use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Clean frequently touched surfaces, frequently with chlorine or alcohol solution, for example, kitchen tables, work desk, etc. Remember, no one is safe until we are all safe. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Health and the Gambia Country Coordinating Mechanism with funding from the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria. For more information, please call our toll-free number 1025.
Welcome back, and over now to some sports and to moments of glory for Gambia's under-20 Scorpions, who extended their winning streak in the ongoing West African Football Championship at the Stade Sheikh Badia in Nouakchott, Mauritania. The young Scorpions beat their Monrovian opponents 4-1 in a brilliant performance, which takes them to the top of the group. Earlier on Tuesday, the young Scorpions beat Cape Verde 2-0 in their opening group match. The Scorpions' victory takes the Gambia under-20 straight to the semi-finals of the Sub-Regional Football Championship. Well, we'll be back with news beyond our borders right after this break. Do stay.
COVID-19 muku sotorinati simfanyalu felese mentano mensete tanka anila dimbayalu COVID-19 pengolu tabang akoita alanno warta andasi tanka kujama pala sako sasa COVID-19 pengo parero ngobe sotorin na jara dinkiralu tole asifa sabanga wale soto Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, anin Sinopharm yenyu ni mengo menta akado kusifa kilingole ke jato kono andu ye mengo menta jote dodo kunna kilinta nyunu kono bang apengo koita asibali COVID-19 jankarola asibali lopitani lala waramfang saya Gambia la jata kende ya bunda hamo minyeneti pour mobe ye pengu kabirin dinding fokeba kabo sanji tannim fula katawa sandola kebulo ku nin safuno la wati mu covid-19 kela baleti men dadiyata to malu peti sila sono yarimba isi menta ke fango ani do nyolu tanka alu karal buloku wati nalu futata suwa kono ani do ku dulalito kane bulo dum mo bulu ni tota itisota ani jenni be domoro kela safuno nin jiyota warang alcohol based hand rub alkar sai kala dulal fita waral ke ku wati sako dulal men boko ko balo kono anin tabulol anin chlorine la warang alcohol to nyala nyato ta soto de katalari ke nyin covid-19 la bari wo nyawnya nyin kuran tententa kantora nyin sanji fulo kono wotali nga demba nga nyin kuran kele katu nim mo kilim mantanka woto mbele mantanka men yenyin kibaro natale wolle Ministry of Health and Gambia Country Coordinating Mechanism men na depansi robota Global Fund bulu men yalon ko wolle ka AIDS kele TB anim malaria na lafta kuma ko yola hani kabi al 1025 kumandi.
Welcome back, and over now to news beyond our shores. A protest against foreigners who were trying to access healthcare services at Kalafong Hospital there in South Africa early on Thursday turned violent. Members of Operation Dudula have been camping outside the hospital for weeks, intimidating foreigners and preventing them from accessing healthcare services. Well, we have more in the CGTN report.
Past 3 weeks, Operation Dudula protesters have been camping here, preventing who they deem as undocumented foreign nationals from accessing this hospital. They accuse them of overburdening the country's health system.
You are saying South African first. Priority must be given to South Africans. But what we have noticed, and then with more of the inside information from most of the hospitals, so you find our caucus queuing long queues, and then when they arrive, they will be told that no medication, isolate. So it's a problem.
But other South Africans have had enough of Operation Dudula's activities. A group of people from a political party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, or EFF, also converged here in protest against Operation Dudula. This led to violent clashes between the two groups. Scuffles broke out. Police had their hands full trying to separate the two groups.
And we are here to dismiss with the concept Dudula, Operational Dudula, a group of 4 people who are stopping, prohibiting or preventing our people to access health care in Kalafong Hospital.
Health Minister Joe Phatla had earlier in the day met with the hospital's management. He condemned the protests.
It is really unwarranted. It's really unwarranted in the sense that our constitution is very clear in terms of the right of South Africans and anybody in the country to be assisted when they need health care. We are aware of the fact that because of a number of factors, there are a number of our neighbors who come to facilities like here to seek help for various medical conditions. We do accept the fact that our services are under pressure, and that if this demand for services from across our neighbors keeps on increasing, it will reach a stage where it is not sustainable. But we believe that it is not up to ordinary citizens of the country to think that they can deal with that to help the state. No.
Dr. Phatla says the government is now looking at various options to deal with this issue, including the possibility of asking neighboring countries to contribute to the health bills of their countrymen and women. Yudisa Njamila for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
You're watching us live from Banjul. This is JRTS News with me, Fatoumata Cham. Before we go, a quick look at our headline-making stories. The top World Bank executive meets Vice President Aliou Badara Diouf to discuss state of the Gambian economy. Tackling money laundering and terrorist financing, representatives of financial institutions, legal and security sector begin a major training on monetary tracking and reporting. And the Central Bank's Monetary Policy Committee briefs the media on the country's economic outlook, reviewing the impact of increased fiscal policy rates on inflation and growth. In sports, the Gambia's under-20 Scorpions register a semi-final spot at the ongoing West African Football Championship in Mauritania with a 4-1 win over Liberia. Away from home, a protest against foreigners from accessing healthcare services in South Africa has turned violent. Plus, UN inspectors say Ukraine's Zaporizhia nuclear power plant has been physically violated, raising concerns about its safety. Well, that was all in this edition of the news. Many thanks for watching. I'll be back at 10. Do stay.